All right, my dears, it is Monday and it is time to start the weekly reading vlog. And I am in dirty, sweaty cleaning mode because that is what I've been doing this morning. It is Memorial Day. This year, it also happens to be my husband's birthday, and so we are having family over this evening, so I was doing a lot of cleaning. Yeah. But I also just now managed to finish the last few pages of Anne of Ingleside, which, by the way, Taylor at Tales and Treats with Tay had given me this book last year, about exactly a year ago. I think she had picked it up at a used bookstore or something somewhere. And I just, assumed it was a vintage copy, like a reprint of it. And that's true. But I also saw that the printing date was 1939. And I assumed that it had been printed the original book had been published a couple decades earlier, along with all of the other Anne of Green Gables books. But I had forgotten that this one was one that Lucy Maud Montgomery had written after the fact to kind of fill in the gaps in the timeline of Anne of Green Gables' life story. So this one was kind of like retrofitted into the series. And it was indeed published in 1939, which I thought was just a reprint, but it actually was published in 1939. And then I set out to try and find out if this was a first edition. And it's not, because it's Grosset and Dunlop. And Grosset and Dunlop were not the original publishers of any of the Anne of Green Gables books. The publishers in the United States were Frederick A. Stokes Company. But the Frederick A. Stokes Company contracted with Grosset and Dunlop to publish all of their reprints. So this is an early reprint within the same year. So it's in 1939 also, as far as I can tell, because it sold so fast, I guess. They had to reprint it within the same year. One way you can tell that it's not a first edition is that it has black lettering on the spine, which apparently all of the Anne books have gold lettering on the actual cover. So I thought that was really cool. And I did not realize that that was the year that it was published. So now I know. Anyway, I really enjoyed this. It's not my favorite of the Anne of Green Gables series because it's very episodic. Is that how you say that word? Like just, some episodes. That's Lucy Maud Montgomery's storytelling style. And this one is like different episodes in the children's lives as they're growing. It spans a few years. I think like 5 or 6 years. And we in turn get some particular experiences with each of the children as they're growing. And so it's fun to be introduced to each of them and their different personalities. And Anne always plays a key role, of course, as their mother in this story. And also as wife to Gilbert. There's some stories involving the two of them. And of course, another one of my favorite characters in the later books in the Anne series, which is Susan Baker. I love Susan Baker. She's hilarious. But my favorite thing about this book is that we are introduced to Rilla, who is, after Anne, my next favorite character. So it'll be Anne, Rilla, and Susan Baker. Oh, gotta put Gilbert in there somewhere. Gilbert's in there too. Anyways, I love Rilla. And I just love how her personality just shines through in this story, even though she's just like a little tot in this book. It's so fun. And also we have in this book, Lucy Maud Montgomery's trademark, beautiful nature writing. It's just sprinkled liberally throughout the whole story. And it's just lovely to immerse yourself in this setting and to see the nature, the way she describes it, so whimsically and beautifully, and I really enjoy that nature writing. It's just so gorgeous. The sense of humor and all of the hijinks the kids get up to and the things that Susan Baker says and her little pet phrases, like Susan Baker always says, "and that you may tie to." And I love that. And then there's another character, Mrs. Marshall Elliott, and she always says, "just like a man." Love that too. So funny. One of the passages that I really enjoyed is one that focuses on Rilla, and it's from her perspective when she's like 4 or 5 years old. And it says, Mummy and Daddy had gone to Charlottetown that morning, and all the other children were in school. So Rilla and Susan were alone at Ingleside. Ordinarily, Rilla would have delighted under such circumstances. She was never lonely. She would have been glad to sit there on the steps, or on her own particular mossy green stone in Rainbow Valley, with a fairy kitten or two for company, and spin fancies about everything she saw: the corner of the lawn that looked like a merry little land of butterflies, the poppies floating over the garden, that great fluffy cloud all alone in the sky, the big bumblebees booming over the nasturtiums, the honeysuckle that hung down to touch her red-brown curls with a yellow finger, the wind that blew. Where did it blow to? Cock Robin, who was back again and was strutting importantly along the railing of the veranda, wondering why Rilla would not play with him. And then it goes on to tell the story about what Rilla is getting herself into. But it's just full of writing like that, just absolutely beautiful. And I love how Lucy Maud Montgomery is teaching us to wonder, to stop for a moment and to look at the brightening sun, or listen to the birds' conversation and to wonder at it, to have a little bit of whimsy and imagination about it, and just to enjoy and to ponder the beauty of creation and the beauty of life and the mysteries of life. Another thing I love about Rilla is just her little personality and the things she says. Susan wants her to go bring a cake to the Ladies' Aid Society or something for like a fundraiser, and Rilla really doesn't want to do it. And Susan says, "Why in the world don't you want to go, Roly-Poly?" which is her nickname. "You always think it is such fun to go for the mail." Rilla was a bit of a roly-poly, but she hated to be called that. "I don't want to hurt my feelings," she said stiffly. I can totally imagine my youngest sister saying that when she was little. It cracks me up. And then Susan explained that the fundraiser was to raise money for orphan boys and girls. And Rilla says, "I'm next thing to an orphan. I've only got one father and mother." So anyways, I enjoyed my time with Anne of Green Gables and her family. And so this one fills a couple of goals. It fills a reread goal for me. It's on my list of rereads. And it is a favorite classic. So that is the May prompt in my Reading the Classics challenge. So, and it brings me closer to finishing the reread of the Anne of Green Gables series. I have 2 left now, Rainbow Valley and Rilla of Ingleside. And I really want to get to Rainbow Valley so that I can get to Rilla of Ingleside, because I love that one, in case you can't tell. So I still need to read. I need to finish the Jane Austen biography. I still need to finish Faro's Daughter, but I'm about halfway through with that one. And that one, it moves quickly. And I also picked up Mountain Laurel by Laurie Benton, which I put Shiloh tentatively on my June reading list for Jane Reed's Christian Fiction Reading Challenge for the one-word title. But I need a Southern fiction, or a book set in the South, for the May prompt, which I hadn't read yet. And so I found the first book in that series, because Shiloh is the second book. The first book in that series, Mountain Laurel, is set in, oh goodness, Tennessee, I want to say. It's set in the South, like on a farm plantation. Yeah, on a plantation. So I am reading that. I'm just a couple of chapters started, but that I am going to read. I need to finish that and Faro's Daughter this week. And I need to also read Lover's Vows, the play by Elizabeth Inchbald, for the Jane Austen 250th birthday celebration. And I need to finish the Jane Austen biography for Chantal's Read Yourself Challenge, because that is my favorite for that prompt. So I am hoping to wrap all of those books up this week. So wish me luck. decided to change things up a little bit. I get a little bit tired of saying, well, hello everyone, it's Tuesday afternoon. So I thought I'd greet you like I greet my students, only I say, hello singers. And I don't always do the same two notes. It kind of depends on what they're learning. Like that would have been for kindergartners. Although they've learned a new note now, so it's hello singers or readers. That's what you are. You might be singers too. Doesn't matter. Hello to you. Today is Tuesday. It is indeed Tuesday. It is a rainy Tuesday. I didn't think it was actually supposed to rain today. I thought it was like iffy, slight possibility, you know, maybe a shower here and there, a sprinkle. No, it's been raining off and on since 11 o'clock this morning. But the terrible thing about that is that it's supposed to be raining like the rest of the week, I think. Rainy days are good days to drink tea. So I'm drinking some tea. And this is my Jane Austen tea. So that brightens up a rainy day considerably, as does a book haul, which is what I have to share with you today. First of all, Dia sent me some happy mail, which I received actually like a week ago, but I keep forgetting to share it with you. And this is so cool. And I don't think that I had heard of this. Dia may have mentioned it actually, because it kind of rang a faint bell in my head when I saw it. So I think Dia may have read it and mentioned this, but it is such a fun concept. It is The Bee and the Fly, The Improbable Correspondence of Louisa May Alcott and Emily Dickinson by Lorraine, Tosiello and Jane Cavolina. The Bee and the Fly, The Improbable Correspondence of Louisa May Alcott and Emily Dickinson presents a lifelong exchange of unknown letters between Dickinson, the reclusive poet, and Alcott, the most renowned author of the time. Researched for over 5 years and drawing heavily on biographical facts, these luminous letters present a friendship that explores the questions of family responsibilities, women's growing influence in the literary world, the cost of fame, and the power of sorority. That is so fun. So it imagines that Emily Dickinson and Louisa May Alcott wrote letters to each other and what the letters would be. I love epistolary works, as we all know, and I do plan on doing Epistolary January again next year, and hopefully my co-hosts are all ready to do that again. I think so. I think we were all pretty excited this year. So definitely, if I don't get it read before then, it will be on my TBR for next January. Absolutely. Anyway, that is so much fun. So thank you, Dia, for that little happy mail for my birthday. And then my family came over yesterday to celebrate my husband's birthday. But I got a couple things too. Not because of birthday, but for other reasons. I think it's so fun that I have sisters who will keep their eyes peeled for books or things that will interest me when they are out and about. And my sister picked this up, I'm assuming at a thrift store, and she knew I had mentioned the author, that I was interested in reading the author. It's a local author to us. It's a well-known personage in the area, Sharon Virts, and she and her husband have long been philanthropists in our area, and they have bought and are restoring in a historic mansion in our town. But they also, the wife, Sharon Virts, she also writes historical fiction, and she sets it all in Virginia, and she heavily researches the true facts and the history behind each story that she writes of these lesser known Virginia characters in history. And so I want to read her books. I haven't yet. I started one once from the library, but then I didn't have time to finish it before I had to return it. So I want to read more. That was a really long introduction to this book. Masque of Honor, a historical novel of the American South by Sharon Virts. Let me read the blurb to you. In this coming-of-age tale set in early 19th century America, two sons of the Virginia aristocracy risk it all to defend their dreams and determine their own destinies. General Armistead Mason and John Jack Mason McCartney are brothers-in-law, second cousins, and descendants of founding father George Mason IV, of George Mason University fame. Ambitious and headstrong, together they set out to find love, acceptance, and honor on their own merit. Armistead, by nature a politician, demands respect and strives for perfection. Jack, by inclination a rover, looks to forge his own path. When Armistead is challenged by corruption in the political machine and is denied a seat in the U.S. Congress, the two become embroiled in a bitter dispute that sets in motion an irrevocable chain of events, leading them to the dueling grounds and an outcome that changes everything. Based on historical events of the 1819 Mason McCarty duel, Masque of Honor is a story of courage, conviction, and the cost of sacrificing one life to forge another. So I love, by the way, the map on the end pages here. So this is going to go in my historical fiction pile. You know, I'm feeling like I just earlier this week shared my June TBR, which had historical fiction options for what I'm going to read. I don't know if I'm actually going to read those ones that I mentioned. Some of them maybe, but there might be some new ones showing up also. We'll see. And then my other sister. So all of my sisters went to, not all, most of them went to Portugal a couple weeks ago. We all like to travel, but I wasn't able to go with them on this trip. But one of the places that they went to in Portugal was a library / bookstore. One or the other, or both maybe, I'm not 100% sure. In Porto, Portugal, and the pictures they posted were amazing. And it was one of the main things my oldest sister really wanted to go to. And so my other sister got me a souvenir there. And it is this cute little bound copy of A Scandal in Bohemia and Other Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. And it has this little sticker on the top that says, made by the world's most beautiful bookshop, Livraria Lelo. I don't speak Portuguese. So this is just a little collection of stories by Sherlock Holmes, obviously. And now look at the actual cover. And it's got, I don't know if you can see, but this is embossed there. Is that the right word? I think so. Embossed. And it's like this, it's a fabric cover. And then these beautiful end papers with the name of the bookshop there. And then these lovely pages that are, have gold on the edges. They're almost like Bible pages. They're a little thicker. If you know what I mean, it's like almost the feeling of a Bible page. Anyway, so that is my little mini bookish haul from the past week of bookish, beautiful things I have acquired. And other than that, I don't have a lot to say, except I wanted to mention a little bit more about the biography, which this is my next focus. So I finished reading Count of Monte Cristo last week. I finished reading Anne of Ingleside yesterday. And this is the next one, together with Faro's Daughter, that I am focusing on finishing up sooner rather than later. And I have fewer than 100 pages left in this one. And I just want to mention, I'm really enjoying it. And overall, I 100% prefer it to the biography that I read last year about Jane Austen. But I think that I struggle a little bit with biographies. And one reason that I love a fictional novelized biography of someone's life is because you know that the lines between fact and fiction are blurred. So you understand that going into it. So anytime the author makes a decision about how to portray the characters, the person's attitudes or motives or dialogue, you know that they're imagining it. You know that it is being fictionalized. So you expect to encounter a certain amount of that. And you know you can't take it for granted that every attitude or motivation or whatever expressed in the story is real. It's just imagining. And so you can choose to accept or reject that the author's view of it and their imagination. And you can just, imagine for yourself, well, I would portray them differently, but at the same time still just enjoy, the way they tell the story of this particular person. But when it's an actual biography, for me, there's a higher expectation of actual fact involved. It's a lot harder for me when a biographical author veers into the imagining part, but not really imagining, like assuming, maybe making assumptions about motives possibly, or about feelings, how a person felt about something. And the thing is with Jane, part of the problem is that makes it even more difficult in her situation to write without this kind of extra editorializing is because Cassandra destroyed so many of Jane's letters, which she had every right to. And, I don't think anyone should hold that against her. But it does mean that many people wonder about some things, about Jane Austen's feelings about certain things that she never actually expressed, that we have evidence of, or her motivations for certain things. People have to guess at it. And it's one thing when the biographical author makes it clear that they're guessing at it. And it's another when it just kind of goes in the flow of the biography and they make it seem as if it's an accurate interpretation. But the thing is, that sort of thing is very biased. And it's just the reality that each of us is going to put ourselves in that person's shoes, and each of us would react differently. None of us are Jane, so none of us would really know how she would react or think or respond in a situation. I just want to read one little example. Like, it's not, I mean, you might listen to this and think, oh, you know, that's fine. And there's not a lot of this in this book, thankfully, a lot less in the book that I read last year. But this is just the sort of thing that when it pops up, and it does pop up in this biography, because there's so little that we have from the horse's mouth, so to speak. When it does happen, and the fact that it happens, you know, more than once or twice, just for me, it makes it difficult to read without getting an attitude myself. I kind of just start to think, like, okay, but can we just stick to the facts, like, about this person? Either write a novel or write a biography. Writing a biography, but stamping your bias over top of Jane does her a disservice when you're trying to just inform readers of what we know to be true about Jane Austen's life. Anyway, here's one example. So she's quoting from a letter that Jane wrote. She says, 7 years, I suppose, are enough to change every pore of one's skin and every feeling of one's mind, wrote Jane to Cassandra this year. Now, this was the year during which her father died, and in this previous 7 years, a lot of things had happened. They had left their home in Steventon and moved to Bath. They had done a lot of traveling, a lot of changes in the family, marriages, births, deaths, all of this, a lot of stuff had happened. And by this point, Jane is a different person. She is a fully grown woman, even by the age of that date, you know, heading steadily towards middle age at this point. No longer a young, marriageable young lady. So that's where she is. Anyway, so that's what Jane wrote to Cassandra one year, thinking back over the drama and upheavals they had gone through. She did not need to say that in 7 years she had lost home and father, nor did she care to spell out that she now had little prospect of marriage and that she had almost lost hope of getting anything published. It was unnecessary to state that she was penniless, dependent on her brothers, and obliged to accept whatever living arrangements were chosen for her. These were not things you wrote down. If possible, you did not allow yourself even to think about them. Now, here's the thing. Basically, what the author is saying is that what Jane wanted to say but didn't is this. Jane didn't write this, but this is what she was thinking. Or Jane didn't actually write this, but this is what she could have written. But the thing is, she didn't write that. So you can't assume that all of that was what she was thinking. She could have had a variety of things in her mind as she was saying that. Surely the loss that her family endured was a huge part of what she was thinking about. Surely that's human nature, right? But she also is framing it all very negatively. And I don't have enough context of this letter from Jane to Cassandra to analyze for myself. Was this a negative outlook that she is having? Is it entirely negative that she's thinking? Maybe she's thinking how much she's grown as a person. Maybe she's thinking that she is, you know, a strong, independent woman now. I don't know. Like, it could be she's thinking something else. You can't just take this one line and extrapolate an entire paragraph of her feeling from it, because it's just one line. So that's the sort of thing, like reading into something more than what you think is there. Quote from the letter by all means and say, maybe she was, when she wrote this, she was thinking about this, or perhaps she was thinking about this. We don't know. But to frame it as this is why she said that, this is what she was thinking behind that statement, it's reading too much into it. The other thing, both this author and the other author that I read, whose name escapes me at the moment, but you would know, it's a very popular biography about Jane Austen. Oh, Lucy Worsley, yeah. Both of them, but Claire Tomalin and her, kind of made a big deal about the fact that Jane and Cassandra were referred to as the girls by their family, in particular their father. And for some reason, they like really read into that, and they were kind of like trying to give some psychological meaning to that. And I know for sure
because I looked into it. I'm pretty sure Lucy Worsley was an only child. I don't think she has any siblings. I might be wrong about that, but I think that's true. And she definitely doesn't have any children of her own. And I don't know about Claire Tomalin. I haven't looked that up. But I feel like they must not have come from or have much interaction with a family larger than 2 or 3 kids, because that's just how you do it. If you have more than 2 or 3 siblings, or if you have more than 3 children, am I right? Can I get an amen? Like, there are girls and there are boys, and you reference them accordingly. Like, I have a piano student family. They have 4 kids, and they're designated in a couple different ways. One is girls and boys, and one is the twins, because there are twins. And then, so those 2 are referenced in that way as twins, or there's the older 2 and the younger 2. Like, that's just, in a family, if you want to reference more than one of your children without naming each one of them, like, you just categorize them, and that just happens naturally. It's not anything to read into. There's no, okay, I guess you could read psychologically into every single thing that we say as humans and the things that we do. In that sense, you could read into it, but there's no deeper meaning there. It's just that Jane and Cassandra were the girls. That's all it means. They were the girls in a family that had, 5 boys. Like, they were the girls. So when they wanted to talk about Jane and Cassandra, they called them the girls. When they were writing letters to someone, instead of saying Jane and Cassandra, which they could, they just called them the girls. And both Claire Tomlin and Lucy Worsley were trying to read something into this about, the meaning behind why they called them the girls. I'm like, because, honey, because they're girls, eh? Like, that's maybe the reason why. Just a thought. I mean, the truth is, I only have 2 kids, and they're both boys, and guess what? I call them the boys. When I'm talking to my husband, or when I'm talking to a relative or friend about both of them, about something collectively that applies to both of them, I call them the boys. I might also call them my kids. I might also call them other things, but I definitely also call them the boys. Like, I don't understand why we need to look into this and analyze this. And that's the thing that bothers me about biographies, is when they read into things that don't need to be read into. Like, just take what's stated for a fact and leave it at that. Okay. End rant. Overall, I'm actually really enjoying this biography, and there's not so much of that in this one. It's a lot less, and a lot of times the author is very careful to use words that make it very clear that here she is just expressing her own thought and judgment about something. She's not trying to present it as fact. So overall, I am enjoying it. It's just those little things about reading biographies, particularly for some reason about Jane Austen. I think because we just don't have as much from the horse's mouth. I think maybe, I don't know. Anyway, so end rant. And also, if I continue making really long clips like this video is going to be like an hour long, and nobody wants that. So yes, I will see you later this week, hopefully with an update that I have finished 1 or possibly 2 books, and what else I have picked up in the meantime. So for now, so long, farewell.
Hey, how's that for a hello? It is now Saturday morning, and I barely had time to read, although I have done some reading, and I definitely have not had time to film anything. Let's see, on Thursday, but during the school day, we had the awards ceremony for the upper school, at my school, the high school, and I was very surprised, delightfully surprised, that both of my boys made the honor roll, so that was exciting. I don't think any of us really expected that. Okay, I don't know if I should admit this to the world at large, but I don't think any of us were really keeping track of their grades, on the online system that they use. I think that we were just, kind of assuming that as long as they didn't get any really poorly graded individual papers, that everything was good. So we weren't really tracking their overall grades. So all of us were kind of surprised that they made the honor roll. So we were very happy. So we celebrated that evening by eating out at a burger place. And then last night was the sports banquet, and both of the boys got awards for that as well. So my younger son and his buddy, which was really sweet because they've been friends since like 4th grade, And they were the only 8th graders on the middle school basketball team. And they got the All-League Award together. And that was really sweet to see. And then my older son, his coach gave him the Coach's Award, and his speech about him, coach's speech about him, just made me tear up. We all love our coach dearly, and unfortunately he's moving out of state to go help his in-laws whose health is not doing well. And we are all going to miss him tremendously. He's just been such a wonderful mentor in my children's lives. And in particular, he had a special bond with my older son, and they both love basketball. So they kind of bonded over that. Anyway, his little speech brought tears to my eyes, and I'm so thankful that my son has that reminder of him as he's heading into his junior year. And we'll have a different coach next year. And wow, crying was not on my bingo card for today, but there you have it. Let's move on. So that was our night last night. Thankfully for us, we had some, well, okay, this is going to sound funny that I started that sentence with thankfully. It's probably poor choice of words. But you'll understand why in a second. We had some terrible weather go through our area last night. Thunderstorms and wind and rains, and some areas had tornadoes. And in fact, I'm looking out in the woods behind my house, and I see that there is a tree that's leaning that wasn't before. Looks like it kind of fell during the storm last night, but thankfully not on anything or anyone. Anyway, terrible storms. Some people are saying that there were actual tornadoes in our area. Some people were saying it was just really high winds. And so I'm not really sure, actually. But first of all, it went west of where we were last night, and during the sports banquet, which is when it was all happening. And secondly, we were at the sports banquet and barely even noticed the weather. And by the time we left, it was just, before and after, it was just like some rain. So I'm very thankful for that because I was a little bit concerned about the storm coming through. Today currently is beautiful. I do think there may be some scattered thunderstorms or whatever, but I don't think it's like it was yesterday. I don't think. Anyway, crazy weather. But now it's a beautiful spring day, so I'm going to take advantage of it and go to the farmer's market. But before that, I wanted to update you on the next book that I have finished, because I did find time to finish reading Faro's Daughter by Georgette, which I am buddy reading with Miriam. And both of us agreed that this book was a bit of a wild ride. And it's one of her more outrageous ones. Like, Georgette has a tendency to write kind of outrageous characters and outrageous storylines, and like she stretches the bounds of credibility, but it's just kind of zany madcap humor sort of thing. If you read Christian fiction, if you've ever read Jen Toronto, very similar sense of humor, although I can't stand, I'm gonna be honest, I can't stand Jen Toronto's sense of humor. Like, it doesn't, I don't think it's funny, I just think it's silly. But for some reason, Georgette is able to just strike a chord with the way she writes it, that it actually is funny, I think. This was not my favorite, though, maybe because I feel like the characters were so... the way she framed the story, like, they were both, like, if you want to use the word violently, in love with each other. Jane Austen would roll her eyes. They were, but they were expressing it, like they didn't want to admit it, like they weren't admitting it to themselves or to each other, and so they were expressing it more in like the exact opposite, like more expressing loathing and hatred than love, but secretly deep down inside, they were falling madly in love with each other. And so it's that kind of outrageous humor sort of situation going on. And then you have like these just the whole plot is outrageous. Like, there's like this ridiculous kidnapping scene and a couple of different elopements that get planned and or are assumed. Anyway, it's just misunderstandings and emotions over the top and characters kind of larger than life. Anyway, it's a wild ride. It's madcap. You kind of just have to set reality aside and just revel in the ridiculous. That's what it's all about. Reveling in the ridiculous. Having said that, I landed on 3 stars because it was a shorter book, and I was glad because she definitely could have drawn it out. There were a lot of scenes that are referred to,
but aren't actually described. Like, you're not put in that scene. You're told about it before or after or both, but you're not actually put into that scene. And so she could have fleshed it out and actually written in those scenes. So it is a shorter book. I don't know how it compares to the length of her others, but it seems shorter. But I was glad because I was kind of a little bit exhausted by the excessive ridiculousness of it. So it wasn't my favorite by Georgette Hare, but it was a fun ride. And so I gave it a 3. That is what I finished. And then I am finally reading, nothing like pushing it to the last day, right? I am reading, or listening to rather, Lover's Vows by Elizabeth Inchbald. And that is our Jane Austen 250th birthday celebration pick. And it's a quick couple-hour read. It's just a play. And actually, I'm listening to the LibriVox recording of it, which is on YouTube. So I'm really enjoying that because they actually have different actors for each part, different voice actors. So, and they're doing a great job. The Baron is not as great. His character is a little dull. And I don't think it's supposed to be quite that dull. It's just kind of monotone, I guess. But all of the others are really great. And it is interesting. There's a variety of accents. They're not trying to read in the accent of the setting, which is German. They're just reading in their own different English accent. But I think we're running the gamut here of Irish and English and American even. And I don't even know what else. So that is kind of a little bit weird, but it doesn't ruin the enjoyment of it. And it's overall really well done. I'm a little leery of LibriVox, so I sometimes will try a LibriVox recording and give up on it, but this one I'm enjoying, and I'm halfway through already. So I have 1 more hour of that to listen to, and I will probably film a quick clip updating with that in a minute. But this video is already really long, I think. So despite the fact that I haven't had much time to film, but how does that work? That's really weird. Okay, I'm going to go to the farmer's market. So let's go.
Not for someone else, but not for me. Rubbers out to get me. That's the way it seems. Disappointment on and on my dream.
I only have a few minutes. It's Saturday afternoon, but I want to finish filming this and get this uploaded. I finished listening to the audio version of Lover's Vows by Elizabeth Inchbald. Now, the reason why we chose this one is because it features prominently in the book Mansfield Park. And it's really, really helpful to read this play in order to understand what's going on in Mansfield Park. It does, however, stand on its own right as a fun play. It's not often performed. I guess it probably doesn't stand up to, Shakespeare or whatever, but it is fun. It's fun and it's short. And to me, it's the tone is comparable to like Oscar Wilde in its style. The language is maybe a little bit older than that, but it's still very funny. There's a butler who speaks only in verse and is hilarious. There's a young woman and she's wealthy, but she's fallen in love with her tutor who is not. And he's actually like a cleric. And so there's a lot of humor in their situation and their dialogue and whatever, and their love story. And there are a lot of parallels in the stories between the different characters that are really drawn out. And anyway, it's just humorous, and yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. It was fun. It's short listen, and I enjoyed listening to the audiobook version of it, and I'm glad that I read it to refresh my memory on all of the characters going into reading Mansfield Park in June. It will really help a lot. So I still have one book I'm working on, Mountain Laurel by Lori Benton, which is for the Christian Fiction Reading Challenge for May, which was to read something set in the South. And it's set in, I want to say Tennessee. And I'm enjoying it. I've never read anything by Lori Benton before, as far as I know. And I want to read Shiloh, which is the next book of this series, for the prompt for June. So I am about a third, maybe a little less than a third of the way through, maybe a quarter of the way through the book. And so still kind of the groundwork is being laid, and I don't really know all what is going on. I'm still kind of getting a feel for the characters and trying to understand exactly what's going on in the story. There are some parts that are not being spelled out and merely alluded to that I'm sure will be revealed as the story goes on. But right now I'm still a little bit like trying to figure out who everybody is and the relationship to each other and what is going to happen in this story and what direction it's going to go. So I'm finding the narrative a little bit disjointed, but that may be because I've just picked up and read small chunks and I haven't been like focusing on it. But now that I've cleared everything else from my May TBR, I can focus on this one. You know, May 31st, there's no rush. Got all the time in the world. But I am excited to get started on my June reading plans. So this is the last one I need to cross off the list, and then I will start doing that. So there we go. And that is the end of my weekly vlog. I hope you enjoyed. Please leave a comment below and tell me what you think about any of the books that I read and how your reading has been going this week and what your favorite thing is that you have been reading. And I will see you next time. Bye.